This is Japan, but this is also Japan. What is happening here? You're witnessing the aftermath of Japan's Nomikai culture. The word Nomikai is formed from the word nomi, to drink, and kai, session. Put together, it means drinking party, and it's core to Japanese culture. But Nomikai culture has a dark side, and these problematic parts have recently come under fire. To understand why, we need to first know what even goes on at a Nomikai. Like seriously, what is happening to Japanese salarymen to come out looking like this? Well, we're about to find out. Welcome to the other side of the workday. Like many things in Japan, traditional nomikai come with a set of rules. First, in traditional workplaces, if you receive an invite, you really should say yes. And I'll explain why later. The colleague who just invited you is called a kanji. They're the organizer who will call up the izakaya, the pub, to make the booking and rally all the participants, just like how they did with you. Next, everyone arrives at the izakaya, but you can't just sit wherever you want. Traditionally, there are assigned seats based on hierarchy. The best seat is called the kamiza, positioned furthest from the door and reserved for the most senior person in the room. The worst seat, called the shimoza, is usually closest to the door, and junior staff members or newcomers will be seated there. This is because historically the position closest to the entrance was most vulnerable to enemy attacks. Once everyone is seated, we can get the drink started. Common courtesy is to order something that can be served fast, like beer, because everyone only starts to drink once all the drinks have been served. After a short toast, usually from the most senior person, the kanpai or cheers comes out, and so begins the drinks. Throughout the night, the kohais or juniors must keep an eye on how full everyone's glasses are. Once they are empty or near empty, the kohais should read the room and proactively top up drinks for their seniors or senpai. So, as the night progresses, you start to feel the alcohol, but your glass keeps getting filled up, and it's really hard to say no. As Finnish researcher Harshaan Niles writes, refusing an offer to drink is bad manners, requiring profuse apologies if one really feels it necessary to do so. As such, sometimes it's easier to employ more subtle strategies. Rather than bluntly voicing out a no, anthropologist Harume Beppu in his 1974 paper describes one such way. If a guest has had enough sake and wants to accept only out of politeness just a little more but not a full cup, then before the cup is full, he must move the cup higher and higher to prevent pouring of more sake, whilst mumbling something to the effect that it is enough. A good Japanese host is not one who necessarily respects the other's wishes. He is more concerned with forcing his hospitality upon the guest. He is thus prepared for the contingency of the guest attempting to refuse the offer by raising the cup. The moment he senses this defense strategy of the guest, he counteracts by holding the bottle higher and higher, raising the bottle at precisely the same speed as the guest raises the cup, so that he can keep on pouring sake. To do this, and to do it without spilling a drop, especially after both parties are intoxicated, is no easy feat. Who knew drinking could have so many strategies involved? This just goes to show how hard it is to turn down a drink even when you've had enough. Excessive drinking at nomikai has been linked to serious health issues, including liver disease, cardiovascular problems, and alcohol dependence. Beyond physical health, these after-work gatherings can strain family and social relationships, as employees often spend long hours with colleagues instead of being at home. These are just some of the well-documented consequences of this tradition. And keep in mind, a lot of the employees there drinking don't have a choice. So why exactly do Japanese people have to go? To answer this question, we have to go back in time and understand first alcohol's significance in Japan. Alcohol has long been woven into the fabric of Japanese culture. In the history of the Kingdom of Wei, the earliest known Chinese text to reference Japan, Japanese people were described as being fond of liquor. Sake, Japan's most iconic liquor, is believed to have been first brewed over 2,000 years ago, around the same time rice cultivation began in the region. Sake quickly became the drink of choice and took on deep spiritual significance. In religious ceremonies, it was first offered to gods before being shared among people, symbolizing a sacred bond between the divine and the mortal. During Japan's feudal era, alcohol consumption was marked by class divisions. Aristocrats enjoyed refined sake in elegant settings, while commoners restrained by poverty brewed their own and reserved it for festivals or special village occasions. These consumption habits would all change though with the industrialization of Japan during the Meiji period. The rise of large-scale breweries made alcohol widely accessible in Japan, and so alcohol became not just a ritual brought out for celebrations, but a routine. With greater urbanization, rural gatherings became less of a thing, but its spirit lives on in modern-day Japan through company drinks. Whether it's celebrating the end of a year, the end of a quarter, or just getting through another week, drinking has remained a key way for Japanese people to connect. Speaking of connection, 지금 한국에 있어요. So if I wanted to connect to data here, 어떻게 해야 할까요? Well, Ubigi has us covered. Ubigi is an app offering eSIM data plans in over 200 destinations. There are so many different options for you depending on how much data you need and where you're going. I'm currently on the 25 gigs Best Asia option because, I don't know, I may do a sneaky trip while I'm here. But that's what I mean by flexibility. This plan covers me so well for multiple destinations, and you can also choose more or less data depending on how chronically online you'll be. Ubigi has super strong coverage and is the only app rechargeable without Wi-Fi connection or data, which is super clutch, so you can always feel secure when you're with Ubigi. Compared to physical SIM cards, Ubigi's eSIM is super easy to activate, so you won't ever stress about losing your original SIM card. And once you land in your destination, all you need to do is turn on data and you're good to go. So for your next trip, travel stress-free with Ubigi. Use my code AINI to get a 10% discount or click the link in the description. Thank you Ubigi for sponsoring this video. Now that we have a sense of alcohol's significance to Japan, we can start to unpack why Nomikai culture is so prevalent. And that comes down to both internal and external factors. First, let's take a look at internal factors, what you want and what people want from you. I mentioned before that it's hard to reject a Nomikai invite, and that's because in Japan, drinking is not just about the alcohol, it's about building relationships. That's because Japan's society is quite reserved. There are a lot of unspoken rules about what you should and shouldn't say. I actually have another video deep diving into what these rules are, so you can check that out later. But for now, just know, in Japan, people don't always say what they think, because speaking too bluntly will come across as being rude, which is socially inappropriate. This means people hold back on their opinions, their thoughts, and how they feel. But drinking creates a kind of social loophole. When Japanese people drink, they're allowed to be more honest, more vulnerable, and say what they really think. So alcohol creates a safe space where we listen and we don't judge. Or, as Partner puts it, the main purpose of drinking is the attainment of uninhibited sociability. As a result, the Japanese even have a word for this process of using drinks to initiate and solidify relationships, and that is nomication, a portmanteau of the Japanese word nomi, to drink, and the English word communication. Naoya, a 32-year-old man from Osaka, says this is one of the biggest reasons why drinking is important to the Japanese. Drinking is one of the most important communication platforms. Alcohol allows Japanese people to express their emotions as well as opinions more openly in this rather socially regimented country. So, if you wanted to get to know someone better, traditionally it would be done over a drink at a nomikai. Now, the flip side, what others want from you. These factors are just as important in solidifying the existence of nomikais, and it's the Japanese work culture that reinforces peer pressure and a group-first mentality. You see, traditional Japanese companies operate with a very communitarian approach, one that emphasizes long-term employee loyalty, family-like work environments, and a strong emphasis on seniority and hierarchy. In this system, drinking after work isn't just encouraged, it's seen as a vital extension of company life, as it strengthens the bonds between colleagues and reinforces a feeling of belonging and loyalty. Within this kind of environment, Partner emphasizes that participation is mandatory if one is interested in one's career and wants to get along with the group. Japan even has this saying, if you want to climb the corporate ladder, you have to drink. Add to this the idea of lifetime employment being the norm in Japan in the 80s. So for the older generation, it was even more important to fit in because you'll be seeing the same colleagues for the next 40 years, which means you're going to the izakaya and you're going to drink. But it's not just about wanting to form connections over a drink or getting pressured into it. Several external factors unique to Japan have allowed nomikai culture to thrive. And that is the accessibility of alcohol, loose liquor laws, and Japan's exceptional tolerance towards being drunk. When we briefly talked through the history of alcohol in Japan, we talked about how alcohol is readily accessible nowadays, but you might not have imagined just how accessible it is, because in Japan, you can buy alcohol from just about any convenience store, and they're open 24/7. You can even find alcohol being sold in vending machines on the street. The legal drinking age in Japan is 20, but most machines don't verify age. So let's just say underage drinking is a lot easier here than in many other countries. The casual relationship Japan Japan has with alcohol is observed by Patron, who notes, alcohol in Japan has never been regarded as a major social problem, and few measures against its production or use have been taken. Alcohol isn't just easy to get, it's also easy to consume. In Japan, it's legal to drink in public, so you'll see people sipping beers at parks, on the street, or even on public transport. Drinking whenever, wherever is not just accepted, it's entirely normal. Japan, being such a safe country, also ironically plays a role in enabling its drinking culture. Someone could be passed out on a bench completely defenseless and wake up with all their possessions intact. People might take a passing glance at them, but Japanese society in general is very tolerant towards being drunk. Patron comments on how Japan has been called a drunkard's paradise, as the inebriated are to be humoured and cared for, and most often this is women's task. This tolerant attitude is even seen in how law enforcement responds. David Bailey in his 1991 book says the following: police officers treat drunken people according to the general view that they are children and are not responsible for what they do and say. The duty of a police officer is to protect them from their own excesses. This exceptional level of tolerance and acceptance is also reflected through data. A 2013 Pew Research Center survey asked people around the world whether they saw drinking alcohol as morally acceptable, unacceptable, or not a moral issue. Japan topped the list, with 66% of respondents saying it was morally acceptable. The next highest was the Czech Republic at just 46%. The combination of all these external factors has created an environment where drinking in Japan is not only easy but largely consequence-free. And so, Nomikai culture has thrived. Note though, the past tense, thrived. Because despite its deep cultural roots, Nomikai culture has increasingly come under fire. In recent years, public attitudes have started to shift, as the social pressure to attend these events and to drink at them has become entangled with issues around harassment and consent. Nomikai culture is such a big thing though. Can this practice really change? Well, the younger generation has something to say about it, and they don't need a drink to speak their mind. For decades, Nomikai culture was seen as just another part of the job, but that attitude is no longer taken for granted. As more women entered the workforce, issues of consent and harassment have brought the more troubling sides of the culture into sharper focus. Kumiko Nemoto, a sociology professor at the Kyoto University of Foreign Studies, comments on this shift. In the past, it happened all the time. It was part of normal corporate culture in Japan, but now it's seen as power harassment. This term, power harassment, relates directly to new laws introduced by the Japanese government in 2019 targeting employers. And these laws have greatly affected how nomikais are conducted and how much pressure there is for employees to attend. Mr. Katsuki, a 47-year-old manager, recalls how back in the day his boss or colleagues would ask him out for drinks up to 4 times a week, and there was really no way of saying no. These days, however, things are different. With stricter laws and companies taking harassment more seriously, he's much more cautious. Subordinates can always anonymously email or write letters to a complaint box. People are much more aware and prudent. This shift in how nomikai are viewed reflects larger changes in Japanese society. The idea of a job for life is no longer the default, and younger workers are increasingly willing to leave companies that don't align with their values. In this day and age, sharing a drink to bond with co-workers after work doesn't hold the same appeal anymore. This generational shift in attitude is clear in an anecdote shared by Takanori Sakaguchi, a procurement consultant. He recalls a friend telling him that more and more job applicants and students at recruitment events are asking whether the company holds drinking parties. To him, it was surprising that the presence of nomikai could influence whether young people wanted to work at a company or not. But these questions make it all very clear. Drinking culture matters, and for some young people, it's a deal breaker. Perhaps it's not that surprising that the younger generation is carrying this attitude into the workplace, because nomikais are actually not just big within the business environment, but also at university, especially in uni clubs. And just quickly expanding on this point, it seems like uni nomikais have gone through quite the transformation. Wu Yixuan, in his 2023 paper, interviewed 7 respondents who all commented on how they had heard or experienced at first uni nomikais being stricter in attendance and having a more hierarchical structure. But nowadays, attendance at uni nomikais are optional, and senior members often behave in an equal manner with their juniors. In addition, none of the interviewees mentioned feeling any pressure to get drunk at nomikai. The expectation to drink heavily or to keep drinking when they don't want to is fading. Outside of drinking, different alternatives to facilitate bonding have become popular over the last decade, such as hiking, eating out, doing sports, activities that don't require alcohol to facilitate a similar kind of bond. As values evolve, so too do traditions. Nomikai will likely remain a key part of how co-workers and students socialize in Japan, but it's already starting to look a bit different. The more problematic parts of it, like compulsory attendance or being pressured to drink past one's limit, are increasingly being questioned. While business nomikai might take longer to change, university culture shows us that such transformation is possible, and with new laws and growing resistance from younger generations, after-work drinks might one day simply be just that. A pressure-free hangout with colleagues, not an obligation that stretches for hours multiple times a week. Drinking culture is such a big part of East Asia, and today we just scratched the surface with Japan. I'd love to do a deep dive into China or Korea next, so make sure to subscribe so you don't miss it. Thank you to my amazing patrons for their support, and don't forget to check out Ubigi using my code below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.